On this week's episode, we talk about everything that gets us through the day, except chocolate.
Welcome to the TGI Monday Show. Now it's week 2 without Roz, and we're doing a bit of guest chairing, so it's my turn today. And I decided that the best thing to do would be to have 2 things that might hold it together for me. First, I'm going to try and do a little bit of this, but I definitely won't be as successful as Roz. And given the size of the crochet hook, that's an indication of how bad at this I actually am.
So I gave you the big pencils at infant school.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's a chunky hook.
I'm not sure this is going to work, but I'm willing to give everything a try.
Did you unravel Paul's cardigan from last episode?
I will not confirm or deny that malicious room. The other thing I'm going to do is use the word segue in the first bit. So my introduction starts with the segue into today's question, because we've got a bit of exciting stuff coming up for TGI Monday. We have only got the blimmin' Gogglebox vicar, Kate Botley, coming to join in with 2 episodes, I believe, coming up at an event about vocations and people exploring their gifts that's going to be in our diocese. So that's very exciting. But I thought that would be a good...
Next Sunday.
Next Sunday!
Yay.
So soon.
The 23rd.
So my segue from that third time
Not
saying
for the
segue
viewers, Paul.
is to... maybe. Who would be your, other than Kate Botley, who's obviously number 1 for our top guest, who would be your choice of interesting, cool guest to have on the show? What do you reckon? Paul, start with you.
Do I have to say something like Jesus?
No, don't say that.
Don't.
Don't say
Jesus
that.
is
No.
always here.
Really,
Okay.
don't say that. No.
Then do I have to say my wife because she's
No,
my
don't
wife?
She's cool.
say that. No.
Yeah, I'd quite
She's
like
very
your wife,
cool.
to be
Would you like to
honest.
have your
She's
wife?
great.
Okay.
Glad mine's
Do I dare say Kate Bush? That's the other woman in my life.
Ooh,
Kate Bush.
okay, she would be interesting.
Kate Bush now or Kate Bush in the 80s?
I've no preference whatsoever.
Really?
Just
lovely.
Kate Bush. Because Julia knows that our marriage is safe unless the doorbell rings and it's
Kate Bush.
Yeah.
Wow. What about you, Hal? Who would you have?
Well, it's Jennifer Lawrence in our house. But I don't think that's going to... No, I would be Bruce Dickinson, who's the...
Who now?
Bruce
terrible,
Dickinson
I know.
is the lead singer of Iron Maiden.
Oh, that would be fun.
Really,
I went to his house and interviewed him.
You interviewed Bruce Dickinson, and I was just
name drop.
green with envy. It was just like, oh, he's a really
That
interesting
would be
guy.
fun.
He's a polymath. He's a really interesting guy.
We
with
should
some
totally do this.
Well, get
Yeah.
if you get Bruce Dickinson on here, I'll be like, oh my god.
We should try anyway.
How might
Dan, who
actually
we go
be
for?
Well, I would.
Obviously, channeled Luther.
I'd ask Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, to come on.
big. Why
Because
not?
I saw him on the Thy Kingdom Come show, which was rather like ours. I
Little bit similar.
I thought he was quite good, and so he might
generally
work.
quite good, isn't
He
he?
might work as a member of our
could be,
team.
he
I mean,
could be good.
we'd have to raise his game a little bit for him, but
I could. Well, so say you. I wouldn't dare. What about you, Steph?
Well, I was thinking about panel shows like ours, and there was one when I was growing up that was called Company. It used to be on Southern TV, and it was the last thing before Close Down.
Yeah,
And some of you are too young to remember Close Down. And there was somebody on there who became better known later, a writer called Adrian Plass, who I later went on to work with at Scargill House, who's a lovely,
he'd be
lovely man.
good.
Adrian
He'd
Plass
be a
would be
great guest to
perfect.
He
have.
Well
would
done.
be good.
He just asks really big questions and is very kind of...
Yeah, he's
Funny,
fun.
yeah.
He's
Yes.
really fun. His
Yes.
latest book is being read in our house at the moment.
Hey,
It's good.
there you go, yeah.
Anyway, that isn't a very good segue. I think that was my 4th time into our next question, because it is a change of gear. Our question comes from a guy called Rick, who asked, "Clergy, how do you unload all the grief?" Now, just to put that into context, he was referring to, from what I understand, he asked you directly, painful, difficult situations that is, at the end of the day, our meat and bread, I think, as we've already discussed. How do you unload all of the grief?
Well, being a priest is a weird experience sometimes. The weirdest day I ever had was when I was in Chorley as a curate, where I buried a person who beat his wife quite badly in the morning. Then I did Tots Praise. And then after that, I did a funeral for a convicted paedophile. So that was the strangest day of my life. That was. So I think what you sometimes feel as a priest is you're wading through death, despair, and just horror sometimes.
So are nurses and funeral directors, and that's something I think we need to say. We're not this very different species, but the question is about priests, so please do.
Yeah, so it's the same for all of us. And I think we have two choices, really. Either we have to learn controlled involvement. In other words, in order to be effective in our role, we have to be emotionally involved in what's going on. So like the funeral of a child or a suicide or other things like that. We have to be emotionally involved in it, but at the same time, we have to distance ourselves from it. Otherwise, we just won't be able to cope.
Yeah.
So what I do really is two things. Really, when I play computer games, I play Doom, and I play metal music very loud. After that, but the other thing I do is that, as a priest in the Eucharist, what we do is on the Sunday we offer up to God the bread and the wine of the Eucharist. And I've got the wheelie bin theology of that. Is as I go through the week, I pick up all the garbage of our world and put it into the wheelie bin. And then in the Eucharist, I offer it up to God and I dump the garbage on his head. And I say, you deal with this.
Yeah.
You deal with this, because I can't deal with this. And
it's a very helpful way of understanding the Eucharist as well, and what happens when we bring our stuff and God transforms our lots of different kinds of deaths into some major life. Now,
God brings back then.
Steph brought in gin. So that's quite a different sort of segue.
But it's worth saying as well, is to finish, is that we give God the garbage, and then He gives us back Himself, which then energizes and allows us to be transformed as priests and Christian people.
And we all need that every single time. I agree.
And I think, like anybody else, we just need our friends around us. We need all the usual kind of support mechanisms that anybody who's dealing with tough stuff needs. And we're no different to anybody else in that sense. I have a friend who, when she was ordained, decided she was not going to drink alone. She was a single woman, but she did once resort to drinking on the phone. So she rang somebody up and said, I need a drink, talk to me while I drink it. But yes, I have to say, the occasional drink at the end of the day can be helpful, and the chance to offload with friends. And I sometimes think that as clergy, we're not very good at the kind of professional practices that would be in place if we were counsellors, or that we don't have formally the kind of supervision and
I do.
safe places. Well, you can arrange it for yourself, but you're not obliged to have it. Nobody checks in a way that they would if you were a therapist, for example, listening to people offloading their stuff all day. And I think it's a really healthy practice, and I do too. But I think
it's an essential practice.
I think so. And I think for anyone who spends time dealing with grief, the only way through it is to grieve, isn't it? And I certainly, when I'm in university chaplaincy now, but when I was in parish ministry, I seemed to take a whole succession of funerals for people that I really loved, people who were members of my community, members of my congregation, and it's really hard to keep doing that and to be the one who holds the funeral and the grief for other people, but at the same time you're grieving yourself. And I think giving yourself space to grieve and to know that will take time and there are no shortcuts is really important for anybody, not just for clergy.
Absolutely. What do you do, Dan?
It's interesting, when I got out of the police and I came into ministry, and I found that clergy drank just as much as police officers. That was one of the first things I noticed. I must admit, I haven't actually dealt with that much grief in this job. Obviously, in my last career, you would be dealing with, you could be going to a rape and a bad car crash, or telling someone their loved one had died, or just a level of grief actually that I don't even experience in this job. It's just way higher.
Yeah.
And more, there's a lot more of it going on, particularly in a sitting. I deal with it in different ways. To a certain extent, I rely on humour and sarcasm a little bit. And you've got to be a little careful with that. I've noticed that some people have found that interpreted the sarcasm a little bit.
Sometimes it's a bit of a barrier that we use.
They thought it was arrogance when actually it was just a coping mechanism. Centering prayer is something I've started using more recently.
What's
I
that?
found
What
that
do you
very
mean by
helpful.
that?
So centering prayer is a way of focusing on a word or a concept of God in your prayer, and so you literally just will drill down on that one thing. So rather than just talking to God as a kind of a monologue, which we often do, is often very helpful, centering prayer is actually discovering God in one concept or in one word.
It's like a meditation.
It's like
isn't it?
it's like a meditation, but don't be
Without the
frightened.
thinking.
But don't be frightened off by it, because it's not like an Eastern mantra.
No.
But you spend a lot of time in quietness, and it's your breathing is regulated, and you're just trying to experience the presence of God within that particular concept. And I find that brings down my stress, and it is a way for me to give to God things that are difficult, so that when I come out of it, I'm actually in a lot better place than when I went in. And I've done that a few times. When there's been some issue, I'll go into centering prayer, and I'll come out, and the Spirit of God has lifted me into a better place, so I can deal with these better.
That's really helpful, because I think what that shows in your life, and it's certainly true in mine, is that we practice that stuff, and we need to kind of get to know ourselves. So I bought a whole range of stuff, as always, and that yes, finding a way that nourishes your spiritual life is really important. And so there's that, for me, involves a whole load of things. So I might pop in on the charity shop on the way home and see if they've got anything interesting for the house or for whatever. I might go outside and potter about in the camper van, or plan to go somewhere. But just to go off grid, because I think there's something quite important about taking time to rest and rejuvenate, whatever that means. The only reason I didn't bring a gin in a tin is because I haven't got one, because I may have
Yours is in the bottle.
I may have drunk it. I definitely
I
do
did still have one
this.
in the fridge. So,
But
yeah.
friends are really, really important for that as well. And going for supervision, but week in, week out, doing exactly what you do at the altar as well.
Friends.
Yeah, friends, let's have a look. Oh,
This is a typical Cody household picture. This is John and this is Gwen. So it's not just human friends, it's furry friends.
oh, definitely.
And it's very hard to be depressed for any length of time when you're surrounded by loving dogs. It's no coincidence that dog is God backwards.
But the other thing, the other thing that I found essential as well is that everything we do as priests matters. That's the awfulest part of it. So like
Yeah.
if you cock up a funeral, that really matters.
Yeah.
If you cock up a wedding, that really matters. If you cock up a pastoral counter, that really matters. And we always get it not perfect.
No.
And sometimes we get it very wrong. So I find having a confessor where I can go and say, this is all the ways I've failed. And actually be told then through absolution, you don't have to be perfect. Yeah, it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And that, more than anything else, I think is essential, is knowing that you will fail. But the grace of God is far more powerful than my ability to fail.
Well, I hope, Rick, that was helpful, or give you a bit of an insight into, actually we all need to find ways of dealing with our grief, and that God is always our companion in it. And that's an important thing for us to learn and to grow in, and to make sure we surround ourselves with people who are going to help us too.
Thank you for watching. We love getting your questions. Do please keep sending them in.
Chocolate's quite helpful. I meant to bring chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate.
Chocolate I
It's like
definitely
anything,
do
isn't
use
it?
on a daily basis. Alcohol
Yeah.
is a bit more of a rarity.